One of the often overlooked byproducts of Barcelona's incredible financial mismanagement over the past couple years is what it's doing to their young pool of talented players. And while they should be collecting a lot of these talented players, they are instead selling them off. So much so that we're doing a Barcelona-only edition of our Wonderkids news segment because they're selling off so many players at the end of the deadline because they need money to register their own players. It's sort of a disaster, but we're going to talk about where some of these players are going, how it might work out for them, and in some cases, how it may actually even work out for Barcelona despite their better judgment. We're going to talk about that next here on Soccer Wonderkids at the Pitchside Pub. So Barcelona is known for its incredible academy, and they have had success using teenagers in their first team the past few years. In fact, they wouldn't be where they are without the impact of those players, which makes it a little surprising how many of them they are still selling away. You would think a club that has no money and can't even register the big transfer names that they're bringing in would want to hold on to every young talented player they can get their hands on, cut the fat, cut the excess weight of veteran salaries, and pay these guys less because they're only teenagers and let them grow. And yet here we are with Barcelona actively shopping and casting off teenager after teenager, and eventually that will catch up with them just like the finances do, just like all the big signings do, just like bad-mouthing players in the media does. It's all going to catch up with them eventually because they have been so reliant on these teenagers, and yet they're selling so many of them off even still. So we're going to talk about who these guys are, who's going where, and how it's going to work out. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. Would you like to see them hold on to these players? Are these good moves? You got to sell somebody, right? Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. So the biggest name is obviously Vitor Roque, whose saga has been going on for around 8 months now since he joined Barcelona. It has not gone smoothly from day one. He was the big offseason acquisition last year, and that's a lot of money for a player who is not going to make an immediate impact, and it was the expectations here that were really a problem. Paying $40 million for a player of his talent was not necessarily a bad thing, although you could argue that a club that has very little money shouldn't be doing it, but they need to bring in premium talent, and Vitor Roque is that. And yet they expected him to drop right in, right away, make an impact, and then when he didn't, he was banished to the bench, didn't get to play much, and now he's just no longer in their plans. And so they're trying to either recoup some of the value by finding a sale partner for him and selling him off for probably 50 cents on the dollar. They tried to force him to Saudi Arabia. He wisely wanted no part of that, and now they're looking for loan deals, and Barcelona's really been shopping both options throughout the summer, and it looks like we may have landed one in Real Betis in La Liga on a loan deal, and this could be a win for everybody. So despite Barcelona's massive, wild mismanagement of this situation, they may end up getting away with it because of this deal. Now, he had been linked to a few other deals. There was talk of Nottingham Forest. There was a loan deal with Lazio, but they wanted a lot of his future earnings. They actually had a deal with Sporting CP lined up for a purchase, not a loan, and he would have gone there, but at the 11th hour, Roque and his management were convinced that staying in La Liga and going to Betis was the better option. In part, probably because it allows him to come back to Barcelona. You imagine, he signed with Barcelona because they are Barcelona, and that's why so many players continue to give them the benefit of the doubt, even though they have obviously not earned it in the last half a decade or so. But the dream is still to play, striker for Barcelona, and that's probably what he wants. And so he gets to go to Real Betis. He's going to play. It might be a 2-year loan. There are some reports, but at the very least, he'll get a year, and that may be an option for a second year, and sort of a we'll see how he does sort of situation. Because I'll bet if he goes and scores 20 goals for Real Betis this year, he's going to be back in a Barcelona jersey come next year. So they're going to get a chance to have him play every day, which they feel like he wasn't ready to do in Barcelona. And that in and of itself is fine. The argument here is that that's probably what should have happened in the first place. You brought him in January, and he should have probably been immediately loaned out somewhere because he wasn't ready to make an impact. Or you bring him in, and that is your narrative, that he's going to play sparingly, he's going to back up Robert Lewandowski, he is our future, we're going to build around him, but that we do not expect a major impact right away. And then anytime he does something great, it's it's icing on the cake. It's a bonus. But they didn't do that. They expected it to happen right away and then cast him out when it didn't happen. So this landing spot at Real Betis could be the best thing that happened to all clubs involved. Betis gets a good, young, talented player that they would not otherwise have been able to afford. Vitor Roque gets to play every day in the league in which he needs to prove himself. So if he goes and scores 20 goals for Real Betis this year, he can show Barcelona, hey, I can do it in this league. And frankly, it doesn't really matter what jersey he's doing it in. If he's scoring those goals in La Liga, he can score it for either club. So he gets a chance to prove himself, and Barcelona gets to let him grow on somebody else's watch, and then they get back a 20 or 21-year-old who has proven himself down the road. So the only way this doesn't work out is if he truly ends up being not a good player and he loses all his value while out on loan. But you know what? If that's the case, that was going to happen either way. So him sitting on the bench rotting at Barcelona was not an option, and this actually should work out well for Vitor Roque. The question is why it didn't happen from the very start. Now, while loaning somebody like Roque out because he needs a place to play makes sense, selling off a young player like Mikayil Faye because he's not going to make the starting lineup really does not. Barcelona, have you ever heard of depth? That's what talented 20-year-olds are for. It looks like he's not going to make Hansi Flick's starting lineup, and thus they want to sell him off for what will probably be about 12 million euros. Now, that's not a massive sum, but Barcelona's looking at it as, 6 times, 8 times what they paid for him not that long ago. And so it's pure revenue, which they desperately need because they can't register Dani Olmo, and they're still trying to get more players in. So they need every single dollar they can get. But this is where the financial mismanagement really hurts. Mikayil Faye is a young, talented player. Is he good enough to be in Barcelona's starting lineup yet? No, probably not. And that's basically what Hansi Flick has said, is that he's not going to get a lot of playing time. But they need depth, and that's what youngsters are for, to back up veterans, to play sparingly, to come in as subs, to get your feet wet, to play against the lower La Liga competition, of which there is plenty, to play in the Copa del Rey, to play in Champions League matches once you've got a dead rubber. There's lots of opportunities. There are chances for young players to play. They're using lots of young players. They do this already, so I guess perhaps they really just don't think Faye is going to be a long-term Barcelona caliber player. But then why are there about a half a dozen teams coming after him? They are lining up to get him. PSV is the latest one reported. Milan is interested in him. Half of Ligue 1 is interested in him. He is a young, talented player, and so it really screams of desperation why they are looking to sell him for around 12 million euros when he could easily be worth double that a few years from now if he only gets a chance to play. So this is hurting their depth. They need young, cheap depth, and they have it, and yet they're selling it off in order to find, little scrapes of money to register players they had no business purchasing in the past. So this is one that could definitely come back to haunt them. I hope Mikayil Faye ends up in a place where he's going to get at least, half playing time, semi-playing time in some sort of rotation. France would be a good option for him. Milan could use defenders. That would be a decent option for him. PSV, that'd be a good league for him to be in. So lots of good options for Mikayil Faye, and I hope he ends up in a good spot and gets the heck out of Barcelona, because frankly, if this is how they're going to operate, they don't deserve to have young talent like this. It's the same sort of story for Albert Navarro, the 18-year-old fullback/center back that Barcelona seems ready to part with and is planning on selling to Atalanta for the whopping sum of 2 million euros. Now, this is not going to be a game changer, a deal breaker long term for Barcelona unless he really, outkicks his projections and becomes a world-class type player. So there's probably relatively low risk here, but it also cuts off any chance of reward. He's 18, he's 6'2", he can play left back or left-sided center back because he's left-footed. He's got a decent amount of potential, and this is why you have youth teams. It's not like he's going to come in and play every day for the first team, but this is why you have depth. This is why you have youth. And yes, he's blocked there, but they're looking to sell every player under the sun. So why would they ever worry about someone blocking a teenage player when no one is safe on their first team roster? It's just so short-sighted by Barcelona. But what really it comes down to is they need the $2 million. They need the $2 million. There's a possible bonus for $1 million, and they need every penny they can get. And so they are selling off any young player that generates any amount of interest because they know they have a strong academy and there will be more on the way. But that is a dangerous philosophy. Navarro is a good, young, talented player. Is he going to become a world beater? I don't know. but at Atalanta, he's going to get a chance to probably play for their youth team and then work his way up to the first team in the next year or two. Well, it's not rocket science. That's exactly what he should be doing at Barcelona. And yet he has to go to Atalanta to find that chance. Why? When you have this young talent, you hold on to it as long as you possibly can. To sell it off for $2 million when you've got a potential $20 million player in there is really short-sighted, but that's been Barcelona's MO financially for the last half a decade, is short-sighted gains now in favor of long-term growth potential because they're so desperate for money right now. So again, I'm happy to see these players get out of Barcelona. I hope he gets a chance with the first team in Atalanta this year. He probably won't get a lot of time with their first team. He'll play for their youth team, which is playing in a lower Italian division this year, but great opportunity. Great opportunity. He can come up in that system, and he'll get a chance to play. And then Atalanta will flip him for $20 million 4 years from now, and they'll cash in, and Barcelona will still be scraping together money for players that they don't need. You can tell how I feel about Barcelona's tactics here. I don't love the strategy of selling off young players for short-term gains right now when there's growth potential in front of you, but it's the position they've put themselves in when they desperately want Nico Williams and they're trying to get Dani Olmo registered, and they still want to make every move under the sun. This is what Barcelona's mismanagement has done, and from a Wonderkid standpoint, I love seeing these kids get out and get a chance to play somewhere else where they're going to be appreciated and they're not going to be treated like assets. But I would love to see your thoughts. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Am I being too harsh on Barcelona? Do these moves make sense, or are they good for the player? Get in the comments section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Thanks as always for joining us here on Soccer Wonder Kids at the Pitchside Pub.